Tonight, new accusations of racism and police brutality after a new video surfaces of a white police officer arresting some black residents, this time in Ohio. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. What started with a mother dropping off her kids at the community pool has now become a national debate. One of these children apparently broke the pool rules. He was asked to leave. His family objected, and things went south from there. This is a different one from the one that we dealt with last week in McKinney, Texas. Just a short time later, the scene in Ohio looked like this.
What is he doing?
Well, that mother, her adult sister, and a 15-year-old boy were all arrested, along with a 12-year-old girl. But does the tape tell the whole story? The mom shown on that tape, Krystal Dixon, is here, live, along with her attorney. We'll also hear from Sheriff David Clarke. But first, Trace Gallagher has more in our West Coast newsroom. Trace?
Megyn, we have more than 5 minutes of video showing what happened before the incident, during, and after. And for context, we will show you the progression. It begins right after the mom, Krystal Dixon, was asked along with the children to leave the pool. Dixon confronts the pool staff, asking for her money back. When the staff declines, she walks back into the park, and at that point you can see an officer approaches her, and he begins asking her to leave. She refuses to leave and refuses to show her ID. A park ranger then comes over at one point, and he starts threatening to make arrests unless they leave. That's when the officer appears to grab Krystal Dixon's arm. Listen to this.
Don't touch my mom. Don't touch my mom. I didn't touch you. Don't touch me. Get off. Get off. What's the crime? Get off.
I asked you to go.
Get off.
Now to the 12-year-old girl in question. Look at this surveillance video inside the pool staff building. You'll see the girl in the black bathing suit will walk over, and she will come and hit police. And then more kids come over as the camera switches angles. You can see they also start hitting the officer. That's when a pool employee calls 911 and begins describing the very scene. Listen to this.
There's two officers here, and they are fighting with them. They are beating up the officers and breaking out of the handcuffs. We need you guys immediately.
Cell phone video then shows an officer wrap his arm around the 12-year-old's neck to move her from the wall to a police cruiser. The girl, as you hear, begins screaming, as do others. A female police officer tries to calm her down. Now, we should note the family of the 12-year-old says she suffered a broken jaw and cracked ribs. The hospital has not yet confirmed that. But while she was cuffed and crying on the ground, the girl only complained about getting pepper spray in her eyes, with the officer telling her how to relieve the burning. Listen to this.
Blink in your eyes. Blink, blink, blink. Listen to me. Blink your eyes. The more you blink, the more water and stuff will come out. Blink, blink, blink. Blink, blink, blink. Are you good?
Now, Fairfield police also say Krystal Dixon asked one of the kids to get a taser from her purse, but we did not see or hear that on the video. The police chief believes under the circumstances, his officers acted with great restraint. The mayor also believes the police acted properly, and they believe if Krystal Dixon had just given her identification, this all could have been avoided. Megyn.
Trace, thank you. Joining me now is the woman at the center of this case, Krystal Dixon, the mother who dropped off those kids and who was subsequently arrested along with her attorney, Clyde Bennett. Thank you both so much for being here. Krystal, let me start with that, with the injuries to your 12-year-old niece. Was she hurt?
On behalf of Ms. Dixon, I'm not going to allow her to answer too many questions because she has criminal charges pending against her.
Okay.
She can answer basic, fundamental questions, but if you asked her about what transpired that day, you expose her to potential information that could be inconsistent with her best interest for the criminal trial.
Understood.
So
Let me ask you,
I'm not going to permit her
Clyde,
to answer questions about the case. You can ask me.
let me ask you whether the 12-year-old niece was hurt. What were her injuries?
My understanding, based on others affiliated with the case, was that she sustained serious injuries as a result of the altercation with the police officer. Keep in mind you have a
broken
12-year-old
jaw?
girl.
That was one of the allegations, just looking to confirm
That's my understanding. That's my understanding. You have a grown adult male trying to subdue a 12-year-old girl. How much force is necessary to subdue a 12-year-old female if you're an adult grown man? Do you have to take that girl and throw her up against a car and use that amount of force on her? And if you do that, is it plausible that she will sustain those type of injuries? And the answer is yes.
And yet the problem, as the police would argue it, Clyde, is that moments before we see the officer do that to the 12-year-old, we see the 12-year-old hitting the cop repeatedly in that other surveillance video that was not highlighted by the family's defenders. Here it is. Here she is on screen right in the black bathing suit. See, she punches the cop, and then they turn the corner, and more punching ensues. And so the police say they were well within their rights. What say you to that?
Ms. Kelly, I've seen the video, and I've seen what purports to be this young lady hitting the police officer. Again, if you're a grown man, you are physically grown. You have physical capabilities to subdue a 12-year-old girl without using excessive force. What type of force is necessary to stop a 12-year-old girl from striking a grown man? The grown man can do a lot of things besides forcibly and excessively and physically grabbing her and throwing her up against a motor vehicle and then pressing her body against the motor vehicle with his.
What do you make of the moment? Because on the other piece of the surveillance where you see what appears to be the young woman punching the officer, he appears surrounded by family members. And at that point, you know, the backup wasn't there. It was just this cop and one other. And then they turn the corner and you see all the family members come and there's one other cop. And so the police are saying he felt threatened.
You saw small children and teenagers screaming and being frightened by the fact that their mother was being physically attacked by a police officer. You did not see children attacking the police officer but for the one 12-year-old who made contact with him a couple of times. Again, if you are a police officer, you do not have to resort to that level of force in order to subdue a 12-year-old. The other individuals were not making contact with him. They were just surrounded by their mother, frightened by what was going on.
Krystal, I know that you are pregnant, that you're expecting a baby, and that was part of the issue between you and your sister. Your sister did not want them to manhandle you because you're expecting a baby. And yet a lot of people will see the tape and say, then just comply. You know, when the police tell you to do something, just comply and then you deal with it later. What do you say?
Let me answer that question.
Well, Clyde, are you going to let her answer anything? Why is she here? What does she have to say to our audience tonight? Why don't you just let her say what she wants to say?
Can I answer your question first?
Well, I would like to hear from Krystal because we're almost out of time, and I'm giving her the floor to say what it is she wanted to say to our viewers tonight. Go ahead, ma'am.
Can I make my point, Ms. Kelly? And then I'll let her speak.
Go ahead, Clyde.
Okay. There's a fundamental misunderstanding that you automatically have to do what the police tells you to do. The fact of the matter is, in the law in this country and in the state of Ohio, is that the police must have probable cause or reasonable suspicion that you've committed a crime, you're in the process of committing a crime, or that you're about to commit a crime before they engage you, before they put their hands on you, before they grab you. In America, you just can't go up to a person and grab them. And that is what happened in this case. That is wrong.
I got it.
So when you ask the question that you ask, you are basically avoiding the misconduct of the police.
Your point is, why should she have to comply with what was an illegal order? And that's going to be your argument.
Exactly.
I'll give you the last chance to have a word. Krystal, go right ahead. Tell us what you wanted to tell us tonight.
You can speak with Clyde.
All right. Thank you both so much for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you both. Also with us tonight, Sheriff David Clarke of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. So there you have it, Sheriff. The cops didn't need to use that amount of force to subdue a 12-year-old and other family members.
First of all, that was a textbook response by the police department, totally appropriate, an appropriate use of force. I think even a little more force would have been reasonable under the circumstances. They were getting no compliance to their lawful commands. I'm getting sick and tired of people engaging the police in these situations, not complying with their lawful commands, resisting arrest, fighting the police, and think that the police should just go home.
They say
When
it wasn't a
you
lawful
engage-
command. That seems to be where they're going. It wasn't a law. When he was stopping her,
It's
demanding
not
her
up-
ID, etc., she had no obligation to comply.
Megyn, it's not up to her. It's not up to those folks on the scene as to whether it was lawful. That gets solved later on in a court of law through due process. When an officer gives a lawful command, and that lawful command, like if they tell you to jump off a building, that is not a lawful command. But when they say to leave, when they say put your hands behind your back, when they tell you you are under arrest, you must comply. When you get into a physical confrontation with a law enforcement officer, I'd like to use that one for a training tape on how officers should behave and respond in those situations. But when you get into a physical confrontation with a law enforcement officer, you can expect to get hurt, because I expect that officer to win. I expect that officer to use, and I'll answer that attorney's question as to how much force is necessary to get a 12-year-old into custody. Reasonable force, enough reasonable force to overcome, not to meet the resistance, to overcome the resistance. I agree with that, Chief. Those officers acted appropriately. They were clear in their commands. And like I said, they probably could have used other intermediate weapons, batons, tasers, to meet that physical resistance. They didn't. That was restraint beyond the call of duty. And like I said, I am tired of these individuals thinking that they can confront the police in these situations and that the police are just going to back off.
And now there's an allegation of racism as well, racism and excessive force. And
there's no racism there. Megyn, there's no racism there. I'm tired of that too. Every time there's a white officer that confronts some black individuals, right away people jump to race. I got one thing for those people in this situation here. I'm talking about this situation. I think there was a racial component. 3 words: shut up already.
Sheriff Clarke, always interesting getting your perspective. Thanks for being here, sir.
My pleasure, Megyn.
What do you think? Facebook.com/The Kelly File and on Twitter at Megyn Kelly. I can feel the comments coming. We also have a Kelly File exclusive tonight in the case of the student suing an elite New England college after the school refused to consider evidence